1 month after my son's oceanfront wedding, the videographer called me and said, "Mrs. Carter, there's something in the footage you need to see. Come alone. And don't tell your son." By the end of that week, I had watched my daughter-in-law kissing another man in her wedding dress, heard my boys laughing about when they'd finally ship me off to a nice facility, and stood in my own dining room handing my youngest son an eviction notice. I was done being their wallet with a pulse. Before I tell you how I went from soft, lonely mom to the woman who legally cut her entire family off from everything I built, tell me in the comments, from which city and country are you watching this story right now? I really want to know where you're listening from. And if you care about justice, boundaries, and standing up to toxic family, please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need to hear that it's okay to stop letting others walk all over you. Now, let me start at the moment one phone call shattered the last illusion I had about my family. The call came on a Tuesday morning, right as the fog was finally lifting off the harbor. I'd just poured my second cup of coffee and sat down with the payroll spreadsheet for the week. After 35 years running Carter's Dockside Diner on the coast of Maine, numbers and tide charts were my background music. The gulls screamed, the ice machine hummed, and for a brief moment, life felt earned. Then my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Bangor area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Hello. This is Elaine," I answered, pencil still in my hand. "Mrs. Carter?" A woman's voice, tight, like she was holding her breath. "This is Megan Doyle. I filmed your son's wedding last month. The one at Seaside Cliffs Inn." I straightened a little in my chair. The memory came with the smell of salt and hydrangeas, and the sound of my oldest boy, Liam, saying vows under an arch of white roses. I'd written a check that made my palms sweat just to make that scene happen. "Yes, Megan. Is everything all right?" There was a small, crackling silence on the line, like she was choosing her next words very carefully. I really hate to do this over the phone, but I noticed something in the footage. Something serious. I think you need to see it in person." The pencil slipped out of my fingers and rolled across the ledger. "What kind of something?" I asked. "I'd rather show you than try to explain. Could you come to my studio in town today, if possible? And, please, Mrs. Carter, come alone. Don't tell Liam. Don't tell his wife. Not yet." The diner suddenly felt colder. I pulled my sweater tighter. "That sounds a little dramatic for a wedding video, don't you think?" "I know," she said quickly. "And I promise I'm not looking for trouble. But if I were you, I'd want to know. I'm free at 11. Doyle Media Studio, on Bay Street. I'll have the clips ready." I stared at the framed photo on the wall by my office door. Liam, in his navy suit, sea breeze in his dark hair, holding his new wife, Natalie, in that fitted lace dress that cost more than my first car. Her makeup was perfect, her smile was perfect, and the whole day was perfect. Except this stranger on the phone was telling me something about that day was not. All right, I said. Finally. "I'll be there." Bun. When I hung up, the diner sounds came, rushing back in. The clatter of a plate from the kitchen, the murmur of customers in the front. My manager, Joe, is calling my name. "Elaine, you got the Cisco order forms? In a minute." I called back, my voice sounding far away to my own ears. I picked up the pencil and tried to focus on food costs and hourly wages, but the numbers blurred. The only numbers that wouldn't leave my head were from last month: $42,000 for the wedding, $18,000 in cash-only envelopes piled on the gift table, one joint savings account. Liam and Natalie had suddenly opened for their future. Megan's words sat on my tongue like a splinter. Something serious. "Come alone. Don't tell your son." By 10:30, Joe had the diner under control. and I was driving my 10-year-old Subaru down the hill into town. Heart thudding so loud, I could feel it in my wrists. I told myself the whole way there that this was probably nothing. Some lighting issue. A glitch. Maybe Megan had caught a drunk uncle in the background doing something embarrassing. That would be bad. Sure, but serious? I parked outside the brick building that housed Doyle Media. The sign was hand-painted and neat, with a camera logo. The kind of small, local business I usually went out of my way to support. I never imagined one of them would be the match that lit my family on fire. When I stepped inside, the air smelled like coffee and dust and printer ink. Wedding photos lined the walls, smiling. Couples on beaches, in barns, and in churches. All of them believing their day was the start of forever. Megan appeared from a back room, petite, freckled, her hair in a loose bun. She looked younger than I'd expected, mid-30s maybe. But her eyes were older, worried, apologetic. "Mrs. Carter," she said, offering her hand. "Thank you for coming. Please," I said automatically. "Call me Elaine." She managed a small smile. "Elaine. I, have the clips set up in my editing suite. Do you want coffee? Water?" I shook my head. "Just show me." The room she led me into was dim, lit mostly by the large monitor on the desk. I sat behind her as she clicked through folders labeled Carter Wedding Raw. "You should know," she said quietly. "I did not go looking for this. I was just doing my final color corrections when I noticed something strange in one of the balcony shots. Once I pulled the timestamp and checked the surrounding footage, it became clear this wasn't an accident." I felt my jaw tighten. "An accident?" She clicked on a clip labeled BTS. "Terrace. A. Elaine," she said, her voice dropping even lower. "This was filmed 85 minutes before the ceremony." The footage filled the screen. Seaside Cliffs Inn stone terrace, floral arrangements half finished, ocean behind it, gray and wild. A figure stepped into frame. It was Natalie, my brand new daughter-in-law, in her white slip, hair and makeup already done, veil pinned in place. And she wasn't alone. Before I tell you what I saw, you need to understand how I got here. I am not a stupid woman. People hear small-town diner owner and picture someone who clips coupons and doesn't know what a trust is. But I built Carter's Dockside Diner from a peeling plaza bait shack into the place locals lined up at every Sunday. I negotiated with seafood suppliers, fired drunk cooks, and survived a recession and a pandemic. I buried a husband and kept the mortgage current. But somewhere along the way, my sons stopped seeing that woman. They just saw Mom, the soft landing, the bailout, the one who'd always cave if you pushed hard enough, and added, "Come on, it's family." We moved to Harborside, Maine, when the boys were little. My late husband, Tom, had fallen in love with the smell of salt and diesel and fried clams. He'd grown up poor in Ohio, and said the first time he stood on a working pier, he felt like the world had finally cracked open. We bought the old shack at the end of the wharf and turned it into the diner. The boys grew up doing homework in Booth 3 and bussing tables in the summer. Liam, the older one, was always precise, lining up ketchup bottles, counting tips. Evan was chaos incarnate, forgotten homework, missing sneakers, and a trail of half-finished projects behind him. When Tom died of a heart attack in his sleep 7 years ago, Liam was already living in Portland, working in corporate accounting, wearing dress shirts, and talking about leveraging his future. Evan was still here in Harborside, allegedly taking community college classes, mostly taking long naps and borrowing my car. I coped the only way I knew how. I worked. I added outdoor seating, updated the menu, ran specials. The diner hummed along, and I told myself that keeping busy was the same thing as healing. Liam came home less often, but when he did, he raved about how proud he was of me. "Most people couldn't do what you did, Mom," he'd say, sitting at the counter, sipping coffee. Other widows sell the business and move in with their kids. You're still out here grinding. It sounded like praise. It was also a script, because after he praised, he always asked. At first, it was small. Help with his student loans. A little extra for a car down payment. I was proud to help. That's what parents do, right? Evan's needs were less polished. Mom, I'm short on rent. Mom, my girlfriend's birthday is coming up, and I don't get paid until Friday. Mom, can you co-sign this? When the landlord at Evan's place sold the building, and he suddenly had nowhere to go, I converted the small apartment above the diner into a living space for him. Just until you're back on your feet, I said. It was supposed to be 6 months. It became 4 years. Within a year, his girlfriend, Kayla, moved in. She was all eyeliner and athleisure and vague talk of starting a podcast. She called me Mama E and posted videos of herself making pancakes in my kitchen with captions like, "Living that cozy coastal life." No one paid rent. They also didn't pay the oil bill, or the internet bill, or for any of the groceries they ate from my pantry. It was all under the umbrella of, we're family, we help each other. Then Liam brought Natalie home. The first time I saw her, she was standing at the edge of the harbor, in a camel coat that probably cost more than I made in a week, holding a latte, and smiling like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Her nails were perfect. So was her hair. So was her laugh. Mom, this is Natalie, Liam said, glowing. She's a lifestyle consultant. Later, I learned that meant influencer, with an Instagram page full of beige furniture and sponsored candles. But I nodded and shook her hand. She called the diner charming, like it was something she'd found at a vintage store. They dated for 2 years. She never really relaxed around me, but she knew when to turn the sweetness on. Elaine, your chowder is literally the best thing I've ever tasted. Elaine, you work so hard. Liam says you never take time for yourself. The first time they talked about getting married, it was over Thanksgiving dinner. Natalie set her wine glass down and said, light as anything. We were thinking a coastal ceremony, something elegant but intimate. No registry cash gifts only. We're trying to be practical. I glanced at Liam, and he met my eyes. Rehearsed earnestness, already in place. Yeah, Mom. We don't need blenders and towels. We want to save for a house. And of course, we'll cover some of the wedding costs. But, there it was. The but it would mean a lot. Natalie added, if you could help us make it beautiful. You know, since you never got the big wedding you wanted when you and Tom eloped, that hit a tender spot I didn't even know was still exposed. We'd eloped in a courthouse with grocery store flowers. I'd always told myself, it's the marriage that matters, not the wedding. But if I was honest, watching other people's lavish weddings at the inn, on the cliff, had sometimes pinched. So I said yes. That's how I ended up writing checks to Seaside Cliffs Inn, to the florist, to the band, and to Megan Doyle for video, stacking invoices on my office desk until they looked like a deck of cards. Liam and Natalie insisted on running the guest list. We'll invite mostly your business friends, Liam said. They're generous, right? They adore you, Natalie added. It'll be like their way of thanking you for what you've built. End quote. Their way of thanking you for what you've built. I didn't like the way she said that, but I ignored it. I told myself they were just excited, that I was overthinking. The wedding itself was, I can't lie, stunning. The inn looked like it had been ripped from the cover of a magazine. Natalie drifted down the aisle like a cloud. Liam looked at her like she'd hung the moon. We took photos with the ocean behind us, and people hugged me and told me, you must be so proud. I was. And when I saw the envelopes piled on the gift table, thick and stuffed, I felt a little thrill of relief. At least they'll start their life together solid, I thought. At least this money will help them build something real. After the wedding, the entitlement ramped up. Liam and Natalie wanted help with just a small down payment on a sleek condo in a new development 2 towns over. Evan and Kayla asked when I was finally going to upgrade this place and give them a real apartment that doesn't smell like fryer oil. They talked about my finances like they were line items in a family budget everyone had access to. When you sell the diner someday. When you eventually move into a retirement community. When you don't have to worry about work anymore. I told myself they were just young. That money stress made people say stupid things. That under the tone and the demands, they loved me. They did love me. They just loved what I could provide a little bit more. And I, dumbly, let that slide. Until Megan showed me what was hiding in the footage from that perfect cliffside day. On Megan's monitor, the terrace came into focus. The wind tugged at the linens on the cocktail tables. Staff moved in the background, setting up glassware. The ocean pounded against the rocks below. Natalie stood near the railing, back to the camera. White slip, hugging her figure, veil trailing down. She looked like something out of a bridal catalog. Then, another figure stepped into the frame from the left. A man. Tall, in a dark suit with no tie, jacket open. Not Liam. Megan froze the frame and glanced back at me. "Watch," she said. She hit play. The man walked straight to Natalie, like they'd done this 100 times. No hesitation, no confusion. She turned toward him, face lighting up in a way I had never seen when she looked at Liam. He said something I couldn't hear. She laughed, shoulders relaxing. Then, clear as day, she reached up, grabbed his lapels, and kissed him. Not a peck. Not a see you later kiss. A familiar, hungry kiss. Her hands slid into his hair. His arms closed around her like he owned her. My heart started hammering so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. Megan clicked to another angle. A second camera, apparently mounted higher on the balcony for B-roll, had caught them from above. Same moment. Same kiss. The same hand of Natalie's sliding up under his jacket, fingers curling at the back of his neck. How long before the ceremony was this? I managed. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Megan pulled up a panel full of tiny numbers. Timestamp is 2:05 p.m. The ceremony started at 3:30, right? I nodded slowly. My throat felt like it was closing. She zoomed in on the man's face in another frame. He pulled back just enough that I could see him clearly. Dark hair, trimmed beard, expensive watch. No one I recognized from the wedding party. And here, Megan said, clicking again. A close-up of his left hand on Natalie's waist. A ring glinted on his finger. Not a plain band, a wide gold ring with a square face, with some kind of symbol engraved in it. Is he? I started. Married, Megan said quietly. I can't say for sure, but that looks like a man's wedding band to me. She clicked to another clip. Natalie grabbed his wrist, checked the time on his watch, then said something, her lips forming clearly enough that Megan slowed the footage and zoomed in. Don't worry, Megan said. I already did this, just to make sure I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. She played the clip at quarter speed. Now, even without sound, I could read Natalie's lips as she spoke. We'll be out of here in a year, Natalie mouthed. We get the money. We get the house. Then we're done. Just trust me. The man smiled, kissed her forehead, and left the frame. Natalie smoothed her veil, checked her lipstick in the reflection of the glass door, and walked back inside toward the bridal suite. 15 minutes later, on another clip, she was walking down the aisle toward my son. I gripped the back of Megan's chair so hard my fingers ached. Have you shown this to anyone else? I asked. She shook her head. No. Honestly, I went back and forth about whether to even call you. I didn't want to blow up anyone's life if there was some explanation. But then I found this. She clicked to a short clip from the reception. The gift table. Natalie and Liam were standing behind it, laughing as they opened envelopes, stacking cash in neat piles. At one point, Natalie leaned toward him, lips close to his ear. and whispered something. He laughed and kissed her cheek. Megan paused the frame on Natalie's face. Her expression was calculating, not joyful, not moved, pleased, but in the way you're pleased when a plan is working. I thought about the insistence on cash gifts and the way they'd angled the invitations. In lieu of traditional registry items, we'd be honored by monetary gifts to help us start our life. Sack and 5. Please graze registry. I thought about the check I'd written for $20,000. And the way Liam had hugged me and said, "You're the best, Mom. We'll pay you back. Someday." And how? I'd laughed and said, "Just be happy." And I thought about the "we'll be out of here in a year" Natalie had mouthed on that balcony. "Can you prove the time on this?" I asked finally. If it ever came to that? Yes. Megan pulled up more metadata. This is straight off the original memory card. The file info shows the date, time, and GPS coordinates from the camera. I also have the full sequence that shows the staff setting up for the ceremony right after. There's no way to fake a whole afternoon's worth of footage like that without some serious Hollywood budget. She opened a drawer and pulled out a small external hard drive in a padded case. I copied everything. The raw files, the metadata, and screenshots. I don't know what you'll do with this, but if I were in your position, I'd want it all. My hand shook a little as I took it. It felt heavier than it should have. "I'm so sorry, Elaine," Megan said. Her eyes were shiny. "I know this must be a lot." I stood up slowly. "You did the right thing. Thank you." The sunlight outside her studio was too bright. My legs carried me back to the car, on autopilot. I sat behind the wheel and stared straight ahead, watching tourists wander past with ice cream and shopping bags, laughing like the world wasn't full of landmines. My son's wife kissing another man in her wedding dress, talking about getting the money and being out of here in a year. What exactly had my son agreed to? And why did the words, "we get the house" lodge in my chest like a hook? If you're listening to this and your stomach just dropped with mine, stay with me, because as bad as that footage was, it was nothing compared to what I discovered when I started following the money. Mini CTA. If you've ever felt that something about your family's behavior around money didn't add up, keep listening. Because the next part is where all the quiet little comments and jokes suddenly made horrifying sense. I didn't confront anyone that day. I drove back up the hill to the diner, parked out back, and walked straight to my office. I put the hard drive in the bottom drawer, under old invoices, and shut it like I was locking up a weapon. Then I sat at my desk and did what I'd always done when the world tilted. I opened a spreadsheet. Lesson in dollars. With the Verstas Vary, I pulled up the wedding budget document on my laptop. Venue, catering, flowers, band, photographer, videographer, numbers in neat little rows, adding up to a number that made the back of my neck prickle. $42,630.17. All me. I added another tab and punched in what I knew about the gifts. I'd been standing near the gift table for a good portion of the reception, greeting people. I'd seen the thick envelopes from my regulars lobstermen who barely made it through winter, still plugging 100 here, 200 there because Elaine's boy deserves a proper start. Liam had called me 3 days after the wedding. Triumph in his voice. "Mom, we were so blessed," he'd said. "Between your gift, your friends, and Natalie's people, we got about 25 grand in cash and checks." I remembered pausing, my dish sponge dripping over the sink. "That much?" "Yeah." "Isn't it amazing?" "Amazing." I wrote down $25,000 in the new tab. Added my $20,000 check. I added the $5,000 check I knew came from my supplier, Hank Wilson, because I'd watched him hand it directly to Liam with a clap on the back and a "don't you dare waste this kid." $50,000 in start our life money. plus the fact that they'd pushed so hard for me to pay for the wedding itself. I stared at the total until the numbers blurred. If Natalie had a boyfriend or husband, and she was talking on the balcony about getting the money and the house, then this wasn't cold feet. It wasn't a drunken mistake. This was a plan. I needed more than a gut feeling and a hard drive from a frightened videographer. The next morning, after a mostly sleepless night, I stopped at the bank on my way to the diner. The Harborside Credit Union had a view of the harbor and the kind of tellers who knew your birthday. I'd opened my first joint account there with Tom when we bought the shack. Pat, the branch manager, had been in my booth at the diner the week before the wedding, eating blueberry pancakes and bragging about her granddaughter. Now she greeted me with a puzzled smile when I asked if we could speak in her office. Of course, Elaine. Everything all right? I sat across from her desk and folded my hands to hide the slight tremor. I just wanted to check on a check I wrote. For the kid's wedding. She tapped at her keyboard. Name. 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 Liam Carter. And Natalie's last name is Haynes. Pat's eyebrows went up. Checking on their account? Just making sure the check cleared properly, I said lightly. You know how I am with bookkeeping. Sure. She clicked a few times. Looks like your check hit their joint savings. The Monday after the wedding. All good. Joint savings. My stomach did a little roll. How long have they had that account? I asked. Keeping my tone casual. Pat scrolled. Opened. Just about 6 weeks before the wedding. Early May. Not earlier? Nope. Brand new. I thought about the way Liam and Natalie had said, we want to save for a house, when they asked for cash. How the invitations had basically said, put money directly into this account for us. They're responsible kids, Pat added, misreading my silence. Nice to see the younger generation, thinking ahead. Yeah, I said quietly. Thinking ahead. On my way out, I stopped at the bulletin board by the door. Local contractors, babysitting, guitar lessons. My eyes slid over a flyer I normally wouldn't have noticed. Elder Law and Estate Planning Clinic free consultations. Protect your home and assets. Attorney. Rebecca Sloan. Esquire. I ripped a tab with the number off without really thinking and shoved it in my pocket. Back at the diner, the lunch rush was already building. Joe took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just handed me a coffee and told me he'd cover the floor if I needed to hide in the office. At 3:30, after things quieted, I went upstairs to the apartment to check if Evan and Kayla had remembered to take out the trash. The smell in the stairwell answered that question before I opened the door. Inside, bowls with crusted pasta sat on the coffee table. Empty pizza boxes leaned against the wall. The sink was a Jenga tower of dirty dishes. Kayla was sprawled on the couch in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, scrolling on her phone. Evan sat at the small kitchen table with his laptop open, pretending to look at job listings. Hey Mom, he said without turning around. We're almost out of coffee, and the Wi-Fi keeps dropping. Can you call the company? I looked at the overflowing trash can. Can you call the trash can? Kayla snorted. Like that was cute. Evan. We need to talk about you two contributing, I said, the words feeling heavier than usual. It's been 4 years. Oil's gone up. Groceries have doubled. I can't keep, Mom. I'm on the brink of landing something. He cut in. Once I get that remote gig with the marketing company, we'll start paying you back. Right, Kay? She nodded vaguely, still scrolling. And speaking of money, Evan added. Liam said you're dragging your feet about helping with their condo. What's that about? I blinked. Excuse me? He said you were acting weird on the phone. He and Nat found this great place in Cape, Brighton. They just need a little extra for the down payment. A little extra? I repeated. He asked for $60,000, Evan. Evan shrugged. Condos are expensive. They can get something smaller, I said. Start where they can afford. Kayla finally looked up. But, Elaine, you've got the diner and the house. You're fine. It's not like you're taking cruises or anything. Wouldn't you rather see them enjoy their life while you're still around? That sentence made my skin crawl. Your brother and his wife are adults, I said. So are you. I am not an ATM, and you two need to start thinking about where you'll live long term, because this apartment is not a permanent solution, Evan scoffed. You want us on the street? That's cool, Mom. Real nurturing. You're 30, I said, more sharply than I intended. I was paying my own rent at 19. You have had 4 years of a free home. I think we both know who's nurturing whom. Kayla's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Wow, she said softly. Okay. I left before the argument could escalate. That night, lying in bed alone, I stared at the ceiling and replayed Megan's footage in my mind. Natalie's kiss. We get the money. We get the house. Then we're done. Get the house. Whose house? Mine. That's when I realized whatever was happening wasn't just about Liam's heart or lack of it. It was about my roof, my livelihood, my entire future. Section 5. The eavesdropped truth. 3 days after seeing the footage, I got my answer. Not from Megan, not from the bank, but from the worst possible source, my own hallway. It was a Sunday evening. The diner was closed early for once, a treat I allowed myself maybe 6 times a year. I'd made a pot of chicken stew and was sitting at the kitchen table downstairs, eating alone, the hum of the fridge loud in the quiet house. Above me, I heard footsteps and laughter. Evan and Kayla. Then a ringtone. Then Kayla's voice, louder than it needed to be. Hey girl. How's married life? The floor in that old building wasn't thick. Sound traveled. Their voices drifted down through the vent like a radio turned low. I wasn't trying to listen, but when you hear your own name in a conversation, your ears sharpen whether you want them to or not. Kayla. No way. He said that? My God, Nat, your mother-in-law is such a soft touch. Silence. Then more laughter. I set my spoon down. Evan. Put it on, speaker. I want to hear this. A little beep. Then Natalie's voice. Tinny but unmistakable. I'm telling you, he's almost there. She was saying. He just needs to feel like he's being a good son. We keep pushing the we need a stable home to start our family line. He'll crack. Kayla. Has she seen the place? 1. Natalie. No. We're not taking Elaine to Cape Brighton until she's already written the check. I'm not giving her a chance to talk herself out of it. Besides, once we have the condo, we don't have to keep pretending to love that greasy diner. She laughed. No offense, Kayla. Please. I hate smelling like fries every time I walk through her kitchen. Evan. So, what's the timeline again? Natalie sighed dramatically. Okay. So, we get the down payment from Elaine. We move into the condo. We host a couple family dinners, show off the place, blah blah. We wait a year to avoid looking suspicious. Then I filed. I gripped the edge of my table. Kayla. And that doesn't screw you over? He will stand. And oven. Natalie. This is Maine, not Mars. Equitable distribution, baby. Half the wedding cash is already in my name, she said. The rest? My lawyer friend says, with the way everything's structured, we can argue I came into the marriage with a slimmer chance he touches my personal assets. We walk away. I sell the condo. And we split the profit my way. Liam gets. Well, he gets to say he was married once. All 3 of them laughed. Evan. And Elaine? Natalie. She'll be heartbroken. Complain about young people these days. And then eventually she'll sign whatever papers you put in front of her because she doesn't want to be alone. Honestly, Ev, you and Kay have the golden ticket. Keep living upstairs, keep her feeling needed, and by the time she's too tired to run that diner, you'll be in the perfect position to help her sell it. My ears rang. Kayla. We've been saying that. Like, it's not. We've been saying that. Abuse. If she needs the help. Those old buildings are a lot of work. We'd be doing her a favor. Rapper. Evan. Exactly. And once we sell, we get the cash and put her in one of those nice senior communities up the coast. The ones with movie nights and stuff. She'll have friends. We'll visit like once a month, so the guilt stays low. Natalie. You see? Everyone wins. My vision blurred. I realized I was standing now. Though I didn't remember getting up. My eldest son's wife saw my life as a series of assets to be liquidated. My younger son, and his girlfriend, saw my old age as a neat line item in a future they were already planning without me. It wasn't just about using my money, they were planning my exit. Evan. So, we're all on the same page. Step 1. Mom funds the condo. Step 2. I keep her sweet. Step 3. Nat divorces Liam, and we all get our cut. Step 4. Senior living brochure time. Kayla. Don't forget. Step 5. Finally getting rid of the smell of fish in my hair. More laughter. Natalie. You two are impossible. Okay, I have to go. Liam's back from picking up takeout, and I need to keep the happy newlywed act up a little longer. Another beep. End of call. I stood in my kitchen, stew cooling on the table, and realized my hands were shaking so badly I could hardly pick up my glass. The worst part wasn't that they'd said it. It was that every piece of the plan fit perfectly with the small things they'd been doing. For months. The constant condo talk, the way Evan and Kayla would sigh theatrically when I mentioned how tired I was. The brochures for active senior communities. Kayla had just accidentally left on my counter one afternoon. All the little comments I'd brushed off. You shouldn't be working so hard at your age. Wouldn't it be nice to have people your own age around? Suddenly clicked into place. My brain wanted to scream that it was a misunderstanding. That they were just blowing off steam. That they'd never actually. But then I remembered Megan's footage. Natalie's mouth formed the words, "We get the money. We get the house. Then, we're done." Sitting alone in that cramped kitchen, I felt something inside me that had been bent for years. Crack. I was done being the soft place to land. The next morning, I called the number on that flyer from the bank. Law office of Rebecca Sloan. A receptionist answered. My name is Elaine Carter, I said. I think my family is planning to take my house and business. I'd like to know what I can do to make sure they don't. Mini CTA. If you're still here and your jaw is on the floor, stick with an jaw. Me, because this is the part where the quiet, tired mom walks into a lawyer's office and walks out with a plan that none of them saw coming. Attorney Rebecca Sloan's office didn't look like the villain's lair my boys would later describe it as. It was on the second floor, above a bookstore in town, with plants in the windows and a little brass bell on the door. The waiting room smelled like paper and lemon oil. A painting of the harbor hung on the wall, almost identical to the view outside. Rebecca herself was in her late 40s, with silver starting at her temples and a no-nonsense posture. She shook my hand firmly and gestured me into a chair in her office. Law books lined one wall, and photos of her kids were on a shelf. So, she said, after her assistant closed the door. Tell me what's going on, and take your time. I hadn't planned to tell her everything. Just the broad strokes. But once I started, the whole story spilled out like someone had cut a line in a bag of flour. I told her about the wedding, the cash gifts, the balcony footage, the gift table, the condo request. Evan and Kayla are living rent-free above the diner. The conversation I'd overheard through the ceiling. The senior community. Jokes. I even told her about my husband, about the diner, and about the years of quietly saying, yes, 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 until my own needs were a dot in the rear view. She listened without interrupting, taking notes, now and then, her expression calm but intent. When I finally stopped, throat raw, Rebecca leaned back slightly and steepled her fingers. First, she said, I'm sorry. That's a lot. No one deserves planning meetings about their future behind their back, especially not when they're the person who built the table everyone's eating at. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Second, she continued, I need you to understand something very clearly. You are not crazy. Everything you're describing is a pattern I see more often than I wish I did. Adult children and manipulative. Partners viewing a parent's assets as an inevitability instead of a gift. You're allowed to protect yourself. Can I? I asked quietly. They make it sound like it would be cruel. Like I'd be choosing money over my family. She shook her head. No. You'd be choosing boundaries over exploitation. Big difference. Now, let's talk about what you own and how it's structured. We went through it all. The house is attached to the diner building both in my name. The business itself, an LLC I'd set up years ago on an accountant's advice but never really thought about. My modest retirement accounts. A life insurance policy Tom had left. Some savings. And do you have a will? Rebecca asked. Yes, I said. It's old. From when Tom was alive. It leaves everything to him. There's a clause that if he's gone, it splits between the boys. She nodded slowly. So right. Now, if you died tomorrow, they'd inherit everything equally. No conditions. I pictured Evan and Kayla immediately listing the diner building with a real estate agent. Liam and Natalie were fighting over who got to drive my Subaru until they could sell it. I don't want that, I said. Words surprised me with how steady they were. Not anymore. Okay, Rebecca said. Then we change it. She pulled out a yellow legal pad and started drawing boxes and arrows. You're a perfect candidate for an irrevocable trust. I'd heard the term. Never really understood it. Irrevocable sounds extreme, I said. It is, she said frankly. That's the point. You create a trust, transfer your assets into it, and set the terms of what happens to them after you die. You can be as generous or as strict as you like. Once it's in place, it's very, very difficult for anyone to challenge it successfully. And my sons? They can't just swoop in and undo it? No, she said. Assuming you're of sound mind when you sign. And you are, by the way, much sharper than a lot of people I see. They would have to prove some kind of coercion or fraud. It's an uphill battle. Meanwhile, your house and business would be owned by the trust, not by Elaine Carter, individual. That gives you layers of protection. I exhaled shakily. So, I wouldn't be able to change it either? Rebecca smiled faintly. There are ways to maintain control during your lifetime. For example, we can set it up so you're the primary beneficiary while you're alive. You still live in your house, run your diner, and access your accounts. The irrevocable part mostly kicks in after you're gone. When it comes to distribution, she flipped the pad toward me. You could, for instance, decide that upon your death, 10% goes to each son, and the remaining 80% goes to a charity, or to a niece you trust, or to a scholarship fund in your husband's name. Or you could say they get nothing. The law doesn't force you to leave your assets to anyone. I stared at the blank spaces in the boxes she'd drawn. The little lines labeled house, business, and savings. What about the apartment upstairs? I asked. Can I make them leave? Rebecca's expression shifted from explanatory to slightly flinty. Do you have a lease agreement with quote? With a Resed, F-time. Them? No. Have they ever paid rent? Not in 4 years. She nodded. Then, they are, legally, guests who have overstayed. In Maine, you can serve them with a 30-day notice to vacate. If they refuse, we go to court. Judges are not sympathetic to adult children who feel entitled to their parents' property. 30 days. How ugly does that get? I asked. Depends on how they react, Rebecca said. But the law will be on your side. We'll do everything by the book. Certified mail, proper language, sheriff on standby, if needed. She paused. Elaine, this is going to hurt. You're not just rearranging money. You're rearranging your entire relationship with your sons. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for that? You ready for that? I thought about Natalie's mouth forming the words, "We're done." I thought about Evan and Kayla casually planning which nice senior community would get me. I thought about years of saying yes to keep the peace. I'm more afraid, I said slowly, of what happens if I don't. Rebecca nodded once, like she'd been waiting for me to say that. All right. Then, here's what we'll do. For the next hour, we mapped it out. Step 1. Draft a new will and simultaneous irrevocable trust, placing the house, diner, and savings into it. Name a professional trustee, a small local firm that had no emotional ties to my kids. I would retain full control of everything while alive. After my death, the trust would direct that a modest, fixed sum be offered, to each son enough to say I hadn't forgotten them, not enough to bankroll their laziness. The bulk would fund scholarships for kids from Harborside who wanted to learn a trade or go to culinary school. Step 2. Serve Evan and Kayla with a 30-day notice to vacate the apartment. No more. Evan. We'll start paying rent soon. No more. Just one more month. Step 3. Prepare for pushback. Document every interaction. Don't argue. Let the paperwork speak. Rebecca slid a printed fee agreement across the desk. For the trust, will, and eviction paperwork, my flat fee is $7,500. I know, that's not nothing. But in the context of what you're protecting, it's a bargain. 100 nextum. That's not. 100 nextumated. I thought about the $42,000 wedding. I thought about the $25,000 in envelopes. I thought about the imaginary condos and the very real senior community brochures. It's worth it, I said, and picked up the pen. When I left her office, the gulls outside sounded the same as they always did. The bookstore downstairs still smelled like old paper and dust. But something inside me had shifted. For the first time in years, I was not reacting to what my family demanded. I was acting, and they had no idea. The eviction notices arrived in a thick envelope 3 days later. Rebecca had sent everything by courier, 2 sets of papers printed on heavy, official-looking stock, with my name and Evans and Kayla's typed out in crisp black letters. Notice to quit premises. 30 days. From service. No wiggle room. They sat on my desk for 24 hours while I gathered my courage. In that time, life upstairs carried on like always. Evan slept late, then came down to the diner in pajama pants to pour himself coffee and borrow the last blueberry muffin from the display case. Kayla filmed herself making avocado toast in my kitchen, tagging the diner's Instagram like she was the one keeping it afloat. On a Thursday night, after the dinner rush, I finally did it. I cleaned the last table myself, told Joe to head home, and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. Then I called up the stairs. Evan? Kayla? Could you come down for a minute? Evan appeared first. Barefoot. Hair sticking up. What's up? Kayla followed, hair in a messy bun that probably took 20 minutes to make. Look that effortless. She clutched her phone like an extra limb. I gestured to the corner booth. Sit, please. They exchanged a quick glance. The last time I'd said those words that way was when Evan was 16 and had borrowed a boat without asking. What's going on? He asked, sliding into the booth. I sat opposite them, the envelope between us. I'd rehearsed different ways to say it, gentle ones, angry ones. In the end, I went with simple. These are for you. Evan frowned, pulling the envelope closer. Bills? Kayla made a face. If it's another lecture about the oil bill, quote, it's not a lecture, I said. It's a legal notice. Rebecca Sloan drafted them. You have 30 days to move out of the apartment. Silence. Evan blinked. Kayla's mouth parted. What? Evan finally said, half laughing like this was a bad joke. You have 30 days. I repeated. After that, if you're still there, I will file with the court and have you removed. Kayla tore open the envelope. Her eyes scanned the page. The color drained from her face. This is insane, she said. Elaine, you can't kick your own son out. We live here. This is our home. I folded my hands on the table so they wouldn't shake. It's my home. You have been my guests. For 4 years. Evan's voice rose. You said we could stay until we got back on our feet. You have had 4 years of getting back on your feet, I said. In that time, I have watched you turn down jobs because they weren't your passion. Watched you buy concert tickets and new shoes, and watched Kayla order takeout 4 nights a week on my tab. I have asked you repeatedly to pay rent. You have not paid a dime. Kayla bristled. We help in other ways, she snapped. I promote the diner. I make content. That's valuable. At no point, I said evenly, did your Instagram posts pay my property tax. Evan slammed his fist lightly on the table. So what? You're just throwing us on the street? Have you lost your mind? No, I said. I have regained it. He laughed bitterly. This is about Liam, isn't it? Because we're the ones who are actually here. We're the ones you can punish. My jaw tightened. This is about boundaries. I should have said a long time ago. I have also changed my will and created a trust. When I die, things will not go how you and your brother have been planning. Kayla's eyes flashed. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I said, that the diner, the building, and my savings are protected. You are adults. Your future is no longer my responsibility to fund. Evan leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Did Liam put you up to this? Is this Natalie's idea? I actually laughed then, a short, humorless sound. Your brother and his wife are part of the reason I went to the lawyer. Yes. But not in the way you think. He opened his mouth to ask what that meant. I stood up. You have 30 days. I said again. I will not argue about this. I will not be guilt-tripped. I suggest you start packing tonight. Kayla stood too, hands shaking now. Everyone in town will hear about this. People will know you kicked your own son out. Good luck getting customers when they hear how heartless you are. I met her eyes. I built this diner before you could walk, Kayla. The people who matter know who I am. They've watched you live off my generosity. For years. Creator. Could watched you live off my generosity for years. Evan's face twisted. You're going to die alone, he said quietly. Venom in every word. I'd rather die alone, I replied, than spend the rest of my life surrounded by people who stayed because I paid them to. I walked away before they could see my tears. Upstairs, the stomping and shouting started almost immediately. Cabinet doors slammed. A glass broke. I heard Kayla hiss, "Call Liam. She's lost it." Good, I thought, wiping my cheeks with the back of my hand. Let them call him. It was time he learned that his soft touch mother had teeth. The next night, my phone buzzed with a text from Liam. Mom, we need to talk. Nat and I are coming up Saturday, family dinner. Please don't do anything else crazy before then. Saturday. Fine. I'd been wondering when to bring out Megan's footage. Now, I had a date. Mini CTA. If you've ever wished you could sit your whole toxic family down and drop the receipts on the table, that moment is coming because, at this dinner, I didn't just serve roasted chicken. I served every lie they thought they'd hidden from me. Saturday, I set the dining table with my good dishes for the first time in years. Not because my children and their partners deserved it. Because I did. I roasted a chicken with lemon and herbs. Made mashed potatoes from scratch. Green beans with slivered almonds and gravy the way Tom used to like it. I set 4 places, 1 for me, 2 for my sons, and one shared edge between their partners and at my spot. I placed a manila folder. Inside were printed screenshots Megan had helped me pull from the footage, as well as a short summary of the trust Rebecca had finalized the day before. At 6, Liam's black SUV pulled into the small lot behind the building. Through the kitchen window, I saw Natalie step out in a cream sweater and gold earrings, looking like an ad for wealthy New England autumn. Evan and Kayla came down the back stairs. A minute later, Evan had put on a collared shirt. Kayla had done her makeup more carefully than usual. The four of them walked in together, like a little tribunal. "Smells amazing, Mom," Liam said, kissing my cheek. His eyes flicked to the manila folder on the table. "What's that?" "Dessert," I said. "Sit." We started quietly enough, passing dishes, making small talk about the weather, about tourists, about the diner. Natalie let out a practiced sigh about how stressful it had been at her PR job. Kayla made a joke about content fatigue. I watched them all carefully. Like they were strangers I'd just met, instead of people I'd given my life to. Finally, halfway through the meal, Liam set down his fork and leaned back. I could feel the shift in the air. "All right," he said. "Let's talk about what's going on." I raised an eyebrow. "By all means." Ha. Ev says you served them with eviction papers," Liam said. "And that you've been talking to lawyers, changing your will, making trusts. Is that true?" "Yes," I said. Simply. Natalie laughed once, disbelieving. "Elaine, that's a little extreme, don't you think? If you're upset with us, we can talk. There's no need to go nuclear." "Nuclear," I repeated. "Interesting word coming from you." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Look," Liam said. "We get that you're stressed. Running a business at your age." "Careful," I said softly. He huffed. "You know what I mean. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. But kicking Evan out? Cutting us out of your estate? That's—" "I never said I cut you out," I interrupted. "I said I protected myself. There's a difference." Kayla dropped her fork with a clatter. "You're acting like we're trying to rob you, Elaine." I reached for the manila folder. My hands were steady now. "That's because you are," I said. I slid the folder into the center of the table and opened it so they could all see. On top was a screenshot of Natalie in her slip and veil, kissing the dark-haired man on the terrace. Silence detonated like a bomb. Liam's face blanched. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. Evan blinked between the photo and me. "What is this?" Liam whispered. "Footage from your wedding," I said. "From 85 minutes before the ceremony. Megan Doyle called me when she found it while editing. That's your wife, kissing another man, talking about getting the money in the house and being out of here in a year. That tax drew and other, that are Temsers." Natalie's chair scraped back. "You had no right to spy on me," she snapped. Her voice shook. "That footage was private. It was filmed at an event I paid for," I said calmly. "On the property, I signed checks to rent. But by all means, let's talk about rights." I flipped to the next page in the folder, a typed transcript of the balcony clip, with Natalie's words highlighted. Liam's eyes ran over the lines. His jaw clenched so tight, a muscle in his cheek twitched. "We get the money, we get the house, then we're done," he read out loud. His voice cracked on the last word. Natalie's cheeks flushed red. "You're taking that out of context," she said weakly. "What context?" I asked. "The one where you already had a backup man on the hook? The one where my business and my home were just part of your retirement plan?" Evan swallowed hard. "Mom, this doesn't mean Nat doesn't care about Liam. People say stupid things when they're nervous." I turned my gaze on him. "And what about when they're relaxed? Sitting upstairs, on speakerphone, planning which nice senior community they'll put me in once they've gotten their cuts?" Kayla's face drained of color. "I heard the whole thing," I said. "Every word about step 1, Mom funds the condo. Step 2, Ev keeps her suite. Step 3. Nat divorces Liam. Step 4. Brochure time. I was standing in my kitchen while you all carved up my future like it was the roast chicken on this table. No one spoke. Liam looked like he'd been punched. You said what? He whispered, turning to Natalie. She glared at me. She's twisting it. We were just brainstorming. Worst case scenarios. If things didn't work out. I was scared, Liam. I didn't mean any of it. That's a lot of detail for something you didn't mean, I said. Kayla found her voice. Elaine, you're blowing this way out of proportion. We were just talking. You can't use that to evict us, or disinherit us. That's abusive. No, I said softly. What's abusive is treating your mother and mother-in-law like a bank you're entitled to. What's abusive is planning how to move me out of my home like a piece of furniture. What's abusive is using family as a weapon every time I say no. I slid the last document out of the folder. A one-page summary Rebecca had drafted for me, describing the basic outline of the trust. This, I said, is what I've done. The diner, the building, my savings, and the house are now in an irrevocable trust. While I'm alive, I control them. When I die, the trust will pay off any remaining debts, fund scholarships for local kids, and offer each of you a modest fixed sum. You will not be selling this building out from under me. You will not be fighting over my things. There will be nothing for you to fight over. Liam's eyes filled. For a moment, I saw my 5-year-old boy who'd cried when he broke his toy truck. Mom, he said, voice thick. You're punishing us for something, Natalie said. Because she was scared. You agreed to it, I said. She told him. We walk away, I sell the condo, and we split the profit. That's what she said upstairs. Did you disagree? Did you tell her that was wrong? Or did you ask her how big her lawyer friend thought your cut would be? His mouth opened and closed. Evan jumped in. We're your sons, he said. Blood is supposed to be thicker than money. Blood, I said slowly, is supposed to be thicker than greed. You all made your priorities very clear. Natalie pushed her chair back. This is insane. You can't just cut your kids off because they upset you. Do you have any idea how this is going to look when we tell people? You can tell whoever you like, I said. Tell them your last mother-in-law put her life's work into a structure that benefits people who haven't used her like a vending machine. If that sounds cruel to them, they're welcome to leave me out of their wills too. Liam stood abruptly, napkin falling from his lap. We're leaving, he said. His voice trembled. Come on, Nat. She grabbed her purse, eyes blazing. At the doorway, he turned back. You're going to regret this, he said. When you're old and alone, and all you have is that stupid diner, you're going to wish you'd trusted your family. I did trust my family, I said. Once. How we got here. They left. Evan and Kayla lingered a moment longer. He looked at me. Something like fear flickering across his face. So that's it? He asked. We're just out? You have 26 days left, I said. After that, yes, you're out. Kayla glared at me through tears. You'll die in that apartment, with no one to find your body for days. Hum, hum, hum. I smiled, tired and sad, and strangely free. Then I'll die in my own bed, I said. In a life I chose. Not in some beige facility you picked, because it had the cheapest meal plan. They left too. The house was so quiet afterward that I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. I sat back down, alone at the table, and ate the rest of my dinner while it was still warm. The next morning, I met Rebecca at her office and signed the final trust documents. Ink on paper, my name in careful cursive. Once we file these, she said, they can rant and threaten and cry all they want. Legally, the path is set. How long does it take? I asked. Processing will be done within a couple of weeks, she said. But for all practical purposes, The protection is effective immediately. Congratulations, Elaine. You just saved your own life's work. That afternoon, Megan emailed to ask if I was all right. I invited her to the diner for coffee. When I thanked her again for showing me the footage, she said something I'll never forget. You know, she murmured, stirring her cup, a lot of people think justice looks like shouting and slamming doors. But sometimes, it looks like paperwork. I smiled. In my case, I said, it looks like a sheriff at my front door. The 30 days that followed were some of the longest and quietest of my life. Evan and Kayla cycled through all 5 stages of grief, sometimes all in one afternoon. First was denial. The court won't actually force us out, Evan said 2 days after the dinner. Judges hate seeing families broken up. They'll tell you to work it out. Rebecca chuckled when I relayed that. He's welcome to come watch eviction court when I'm there next Thursday, she said dryly. Judges hate people who think their parents owe them free housing. Then came anger. I found a broken mug in the sink, shattered in a way that suggested it hadn't just slipped. A cabinet door hung crooked on one hinge. Someone had slammed it hard enough to crack the wood. Any damage they do upstairs comes out of their security deposit, Rebecca had joked. Oh wait, they don't have one. Next was bargaining. On day 10, Kayla knocked on my office door, mascara smudged, tissue in hand. Elaine, she said, we messed up. We shouldn't have joked about the senior community. We love you. We'll pay rent. I'll get a real job. Please don't do this. I looked at her for a long moment. If you had come to me like this before the eviction notice, I said, I might have believed you. Now, I only hear panic. Her eyes flashed. You're being cruel. No, I said gently. I'm being consistent. On day 15, Liam called. Mom, he said without preamble, I talked to a lawyer. They said what you did with the trust is complicated to challenge. But they also said that if we can prove you're not thinking clearly, we can. I hung up. He called back. I let it go to voicemail. Fine, he said in the message, his voice tight with fury. Freeze us out. But when you get sick, don't expect us to drop everything. We're done. I saved the voicemail. Not because I ever wanted to listen to it again, but because if there was any doubt left in my mind about whether I'd made the right decision, that was Exhibit A. Around day 20, word started to trickle through town. Small places like Harborside run on gossip like ships run on fuel. At the farmer's market, Mrs. Hanley from church approached me at the tomato stand. I heard you're asking Evan to move out, she said cautiously. Everything all right? I took a breath. This was the moment I'd been dreading, the moral judgment of people who hadn't lived my life. Yes, I said. Everything's finally all right. He's 30 years old, Mrs. Hanley. He and his girlfriend have lived in my home for 4 years without paying rent, while planning what to do with my things when I'm gone. I'm helping them grow up. She studied me for a second, then nodded slowly. About time, she said. My Kevin's 32, and if he tried that, I'd have his bags on the sidewalk. Drivin'. My Kevin, drivin' 22-4. One that's sad. Not everyone was as understanding. One of Liam's friends left a nasty review for the diner online about how I abandoned my family for money. Joe showed it to me on his phone, cheeks red. Want me to do? Reply? He asked. No, I said. Let it sit there. People who know me will see through it. People who don't, their opinion doesn't pay my lobster bill. Day 30 arrived on a gray Monday. Rain drizzled down the windows. I'd coordinated with Rebecca and the county sheriff's office. At 10 a.m., Deputy Harris met us in the parking lot. He was middle-aged, calm, and gave off the energy of a man who'd seen far worse than a mother evicting her freeloading adult son. Are you sure you want to go through with this? He asked quietly as we stood at the base of the stairs. I've never been more sure of anything, I said. We climbed the stairs together. I knocked. Who is it? Evan called. His voice was flat and tired. "Sheriff's office," Harris said. "Open up." The door opened a crack. Kayla peered through, hair uncombed, eyes puffy. When she saw the uniform, her mouth tightened. "This is harassment," she snapped. But she stepped back to let us in. The apartment looked like it had been hit by a storm. Half-packed boxes, clothes strewn, trash bags in piles. They'd made some effort. Not enough. "Mr. Carter," Harris said. "You were served with a notice to quit 30 days ago. As of today, you no longer have the right to occupy this residence. I'm here to supervise your departure and ensure everyone's safety." Evan sat on the edge of the unmade bed, shoulders slumped. He looked older than 30, suddenly. Or maybe I was just seeing him clearly, for the first time. "So that's it," he muttered. "You called the cops on your own, kid." "I called the sheriff to enforce the law," I said. "You made yourself my tenant when you refused to leave." He stared at the floor. "We don't have anywhere to go." "Who part?" "We don't have anywhere to go." "Who part?" "We don't have anywhere to go." Rebecca, standing behind Harris, spoke up. "You've had 30 days to find somewhere, Mr. Carter. If you'd like, I have a list of local rooming houses and landlords a lot of my clients use. But you can't stay here." "Now." Kayla turned to me, tears spilling. "You'll regret this, Elaine," she said, voice shaking. "When you're old and can't climb those stairs. When you need help and no one answers your calls. You'll remember this day." I swallowed hard. "Maybe," I said. "But I'll also remember the day you sat above my head, planning where to send me when you were done squeezing me dry." Regret goes both ways. They packed in angry silence for the next hour, with Harris watching from the doorway. I stayed near the back wall, out of their way, hands clasped, so I wouldn't instinctively offer to help. At one point, Evan paused by the windowsill where a faded photo of him and Liam as kids still sat. He picked it up, looked at it for a long time, then set it back down. He didn't take it. When they finally carried the last box down the stairs to Kayla's dented Honda, the rain had picked up. Evan stood by the car door, one hand on the roof, and looked back up at the building. "You're really okay with this?" He called up to me, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. "You're okay being alone?" I leaned on the railing. The salty air filled my lungs. "No," I said. "I'm not okay with being alone. I'm okay with not being used." He shook his head, got in the car, and slammed the door. They drove off in a spray of dirty water. Harris handed me a form to sign, confirming the eviction was complete. "If they show up again and refuse to leave," he said, "call us. At that point, it's trespassing." "Thank you," I said. When he left, the building was silent. No bass thumping through the ceiling. No late-night laughter. No footsteps at 2 a.m. Just the hum of the fridge downstairs and the distant cry of gulls. I went up to the now empty apartment. It smelled like stale smoke and takeout, but under that, faintly, was the original scent of the building: salt, old wood, and coffee. I opened the windows to let the damp October air in. Over the next week, I scrubbed every surface, painted the walls a fresh pale blue, and had Joe's nephew install new cabinet doors. I replaced the sagging couch with a sturdy second-hand one, and bought a small bookshelf. I did it alone. On purpose. 2 weeks later, I listed the apartment as a short-term rental for tourists. A retired couple from Vermont booked the first weekend and left a handwritten note in the guest book about how peaceful it had been, with the sound of the harbor and the smell of bacon from the diner below. Life didn't magically become perfect. Liam barely spoke to me. He and Natalie divorced quietly 6 months later. Word around town was that the legal fees ate a good chunk of their wedding money. When he called to tell me, his voice was brittle. "You were right about her," he said. "Happy?" "No," I said. "I'm sad it took you this long to see it." He hung up. Sometimes he texts on holidays. Short, polite messages. I always reply, but I don't fill the silence in between anymore. That's his work to do. Evan and Kayla moved 2 towns. Over. I heard through Mrs. Hanley that he's working at a hardware store, and she's stocking shelves at a big box retailer. They haven't set foot in the diner since the eviction. For a while, I'd catch myself glancing at the door whenever a bell jingled, half expecting one of them to walk in, contrite, ready to apologize. They didn't. What did walk in? Slowly. Something else. My own life. Without constant financial fires to put out, the diner's profits actually started going where they were supposed to. I hired another part-timer to give myself Saturdays off. I joined a book club at the library. I volunteered twice a month at the community center, teaching basic cooking to teens who'd grown up on microwave meals. Megan started stopping by more often. At first, it was just for coffee. Then one day, she brought in a camera and asked if she could photograph the diner for her portfolio. "You know," she said, adjusting a lens, "I've filmed a lot of weddings. Most of them will end in divorce. But I've never seen anyone take something that ugly and turn it into this." "This?" I asked. "Freedom," she said simply. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, she sits at the counter doing edits while I wipe down tables. We talk about nothing and everything. She doesn't ask for anything but my company. It's a strange, wonderful feeling. The trust Rebecca set up hums along in the background like a generator. Quiet, steady, ready for storms. We picked a name for the scholarship fund. The Tom and Elaine Carter Harbor Futures Fund. The first beneficiary was a kid whose father fishes on Hank Wilson's boat. A shy boy who wants to be a diesel mechanic. "That's what you want?" I asked him, when he came in to thank me. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I want to fix things that keep people working." I smiled. "So do I," I said. "Sometimes at night." I sit at the small table by my kitchen window, with a cup of tea, and look up at the apartment where my son used to sleep, where he planned, with his girlfriend and his brother's wife, to ease me out of my own life, like a piece they were rearranging on a chessboard. The lights up there belong to other people now. Couples on vacation. A writer finishing a draft. A widow taking her first trip alone. They leave me notes about how restful it was and how the sound of the harbor soothed them. I feel at peace, not happy all the time, not glowing with forgiveness, but grounded. If you're listening to this, maybe you're where I was. Tired, uneasy, brushing off little comments. Because the alternative, accepting that your own family sees you as an opportunity rather than a person, is too painful. Here's what I learned. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a stack of forms at a lawyer's office, a signature on a trust document, or a 30-day notice taped to a door. Love isn't always obedience. Sometimes it's saying no. Sometimes it's loving your children enough to stop enabling the worst parts of them, even if they hate you for it. And being alone is not the worst fate. Being surrounded by people who only come close when your wallet is open, that's lonelier. If you've made it this far into my story, thank you for listening. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have gone as far as I did? Or would you have tried to forgive and hope they changed? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and your perspective might help someone else who's standing on the edge of the same decision. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that they're allowed to protect themselves. And subscribe to the channel for more real feeling stories about justice, boundaries, and standing up to toxic behavior.